Which is the strongest Zanpakutō in Bleach? That's the question that we're going to try and answer today. In fact, I'm going to attempt to rank what I believe to be the top 10 strongest of them all. We haven't looked at the Zanpakutō themselves like this for almost 4 years, which is a terrifying thought, and upon revisiting this subject, it occurred to me that this is a nearly impossible list to make. In order to level the playing field somewhat, I tried to completely remove the Zanpakuto's respective Shinigami from the equation, but that only introduced even more issues. Doing so effectively means a lot of these Zanpakuto that would make the list already are now all extremely powerful in their own right, maybe even more so when not limited by their wielder's strength or mentality. Plus, separating Shinigami from Zanpakuto is inherently almost impossible anyway, since you can't really have one without the other, hence the blade is me. Nozarashi wouldn't exist in the same capacity without Kenpachi behind it, for example, but still, all that being said, I've gone and done it anyway. And by the way, before we get started, a special shout out goes out to the sponsor of today's video, a new sponsor for the channel, Mecha Japan. I'm in need of some new figures and merch for the background here. I'm always trying to evolve and change it over time, and obviously it looks pretty nice since moving into the new house, but Mecha Japan is a fantastic resource. It's gonna be a fantastic resource for me to hopefully continue to improve my collection with some awesome new Bleach merch, and you can do exactly the same, but we'll take a closer look at what they have to offer a little later in the video. And so we come to the list. Like I said, this was incredibly difficult to make, I can't stress that enough. And there's an absolute litany of Zanpakuto that didn't make the list for one reason or another, even though I think they are incredibly strong in their own right. Zanpakuto like Sakanade, Wabisuke, Suzumushi, Zabimaru, Kinshara, Suzumebachi, when taken at face value with their Shinigami removed as best as possible, these are all extraordinarily strong weapons with crazy abilities. But when you see the list itself, what made the list, the caliber of Zanpakuto there, the Zanpakuto on there are just on another level entirely, and hopefully you'll agree. So, without further ado, let's get started on the list itself. These are the top 10 strongest Zanpakuto in the Bleach manga, ranked. Before we get started on the video, guys, there will be some spoilers for the remainder of the 1000-Year Blood War arc of Bleach to come, so make sure you're aware of that before diving in. And if you want to help support the channel that extra step further, consider hitting subscribe when you're done with this video. If you enjoyed it and you want to stay up to date with everything that I put out here, I really would appreciate it. And speaking of support, if you haven't checked out my other channel, Mr. Tomo Talks Games, make sure to go and do that now. In honor of my favorite game's 10th anniversary, Bloodborne, this month, I'll be uploading a few videos looking at what I think are the main pillars that made that game so great, starting with the video I put out yesterday, analysing the DLC, The Old Hunters, and its first boss, specifically Ludwig. So if you've got any interest in that at all, consider going over there and checking out that channel. I really would appreciate the support, and consider dropping a subscribe there as well, if you like what you see. And as always, I want to start things off then with a few honourable mentions. Now, like I said, there are innumerable amount of Zanpakuto that frankly could have made this list, and so I'd like to include them all here in some form or another. Those that I mentioned previously, Shinji's Sakanade, Tosen's Suzumushi, Izaru's Wabisuke, Renji's Zabimaru, Rose's Kinshara, Soifon's Suzumebachi. These Zanpakuto are all incredibly strong when you boil it down to what their abilities are, what they can do. Some are stronger than others in certain areas. Zabimaru, for instance, has an incredibly powerful and versatile true bankai, while Suzumebachi is extremely deadly when in Shikai, possessing an ability like no other, one designed for assassination. But there are a few other Zanpakuto that I wanted to truly take a moment to highlight here in the honourable mentions section of the video too. First up is Oetsu Nimaya's Sayafushi, certainly one of the strangest Zanpakuto on this list. Oetsu is of course the Blade God, the creator of the Zanpakuto, and in his eyes Sayafushi is a failure. Its edge is simply too sharp. The sword cannot be contained in any sheath. It's for this reason that Sayafushi must be transported in a vat of liquid, and how in Oetsu's own words, the blade has a one-hit, one-kill swing. And that's what's curious about Saifushi. It makes it onto this list not because of its abilities, but simply due to how it's been made, how it was forged. Whatever abilities Saifushi may have, if any at all, we don't know them. But the sword itself is so absurdly, impossibly sharp that Uetsu uses it to effortlessly carve through Yhwach's Schutzstaffel with ease. The reason it doesn't make it onto the list itself is because of that very reason, however. Since the one-hit, one-kill swing of Saifushi isn't an ability, it isn't playing by any hard and fast rules, and we see that by successfully timing his dodge, Askin was able to avoid being killed instantly despite being struck, contradicting Uetsu's own proclamation. This is still a ridiculously dangerous and powerful Zanpakutō, experimental even, but those on the list are playing by a different set of rules. Next up in the honourable mentions is Byakuya Kuchiki's Senbon Zakura, which in my opinion is one of Bleach's most well-balanced and versatile Zanpakutō. In many ways, Senbon Zakura has it all. Overwhelming, relentless offensive capabilities, an all-encompassing defensive shield, and even a multi-tiered bankai with a variety of special forms. Yes, Senbon Zakura's power to split the sword itself into thousands of cherry blossom blades is extremely powerful, while at the same time remaining one of the most fair, balanced, and reliable weapons of the series. What keeps it from making the list for real, however, is its lack of a single killer ability. Senbon Zakura, even in Bankai, doesn't possess the kind of inherently busted power that basically every Zanpakutō on the actual top 10 has, and I think you'll see what I mean as we progress through. But outside of those frankly broken Zanpakutō that make up the upper echelon, Senbon Zakura stands tall as perhaps the best of the best, in my opinion. And the final Zanpakutō I want to highlight here in the honourable mention slot is perhaps going to be the most controversial placement on this entire list. Even I'm not fully convinced by it, but it's Kenpachi Zaraki's Nozarashi. It felt fitting to place it here alongside Byakuya's Senbon Zakura, as the two are often directly compared, especially by yours truly. But remember that crucially, I'm trying my best to separate Zanpakutō and Shinigami here. Nozarashi is maybe one of the toughest examples of achieving this in a harmonious way, however, as without Kenpachi behind it, what really is Nozarashi at all? In many ways, it does represent the perfect foil to Senbon Zakura. Where Senbon Zakura is versatile and elegant, Nozarashi is immensely straightforward and brutish. While any abilities Nozarashi might have are never outright explained, it is clear the Zanpakutō can essentially cut through anything, including even a meteor and space itself, which is pretty absurd, while its bankai transforms the user into a hulking, devilish berserker, whose physical attributes are amplified enormously. Again, unlike the multi-tiered approach to bankai of Senbon Zakura, Nozarashi's unnamed bankai is very much what you see is what you get. For now, I'm content with placing this here. Removing their respective Shinigami from the equation, Nozarashi and Senbon Zakura do feel like two sides of the same coin. And so, with the honourable mentions out of the way, it's time now for the actual top 10, but before that, first a word from today's sponsor. Over the years, you might have noticed behind me that I've got a fair bit of Bleach merch. The manga, of course, but some pop Funkos, some figures, even this cool little Askin bookmark, and I'm always on the lookout for more to add to the background. Well, it was handy then when I came across Mecha Japan, an online store that sells products from major Japanese licenses such as Nintendo, Capcom, Sega, and crucially for me, Shonen Jump. With a catalogue of more than 40,000 high-quality products straight from Japan, you can be sure to find something that speaks to you. I'd like to get some more figures for the background, and it's exciting to see just how many Thousand Year Blood War Arc items are available. This Grimjo figure and his Thousand Year Blood War Arc outfit is really awesome, and there are even some upcoming items available for pre-order, like this figure featuring Uryu's Volsten dish from Core 3 of the anime. If you're interested in getting some Bleach merch of your own, including some rare and very rare items that are even listed as such on the website, some of which can only be found on Mecha Japan, then make sure to visit the site using my link in the description or the pinned comment and have a look around. The prices are great and they offer worldwide shipping too. Plus, by visiting my link, you can use the discount code aizen10 to get $10 off of orders greater than $100. Make sure to follow Mecha Japan's socials to stay up to date with everything they stock, and let me know down in the comments what you decide to pick up. Thanks everyone, and thanks again to Mecha Japan for sponsoring today's video. Okay, so, and at number 10 on our list, we have Gin Ichimaru's Shinso, one of Bleach's deadliest Zanpakutō. Now, the Shikai isn't necessarily anything special. It's extremely quick and unpredictable, with Gin able to rapidly extend the Zanpakutō's blade in a flash, but that's really all it can do. However, where this Zanpakutō truly shines is with its bankai, Kamishini no Yari, unlocking a power capable of killing even a god. Kamishini no Yari's ultimate ability is devastatingly strong, and perhaps most dangerous of all, essentially impossible to see coming. Gin's bankai, even more so than the Shikai, is immeasurably quick, and it's over from the moment he successfully stabs his opponent, leaving a fragment of the blade inside them, which then dissolves into a fatal poison that corrodes the body. By doing so, Gin was even able to kill a transcendent aizen, who had long evolved beyond the normal limits of a Shinigami. Were it not for the Hogyoku's interference, Gin would have killed aizen with ease right there and then. On top of this, Kamishini no Yari is both absurdly long and, as mentioned, impossibly fast, giving its wielder everything they need in battle. In 9th place, we have, would you believe it, another difficult Zanpakutō to rank, yet one that I feel deserves to be here somewhere, and that's Mayuri Kurotsuchi's Ashisogi Jizo. In its Shikai state, its simplest, most condensed form, Ashisogi Jizo honestly feels like a better version of Wabisuke. Simply by slashing the opponent, Ashisogi Jizo cuts out the middleman and paralyzes their limbs, rendering them totally immobile, as we see with both Uryu and Kenpachi. This is a deceptively nasty ability, meaning Ashisogi Jizo needs to only land a single hit to leave its opponent utterly helpless. Then there's the bankai, Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo, and that's where things get tough. Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo is even more intimately tied to Mayuri than most, as he actively modifies and transforms his bankai, and his initial bankai wasn't even acquired through the normal means, but by utilizing the technology used in Nemu's creation and growth. Meaning, what I'm getting at here is that we would not have this form of bankai without Mayuri himself. Still, using what we see in the manga, the original form of this bankai spews a deadly poison from its mouth, which is fatal to anyone that can't formulate an antidote in time. And of course, Konjiki Ashisogi Jizo Matai Fukuin Shotai is even more incredible, completely transforming the bankai into one that can counter anything, so long as the user has enough time to gather data throughout a battle. This theoretically should mean that Matai Fukuin Shotai can surpass any Zanpakutō put before it, but there are just too many unanswered questions regarding how this variant bankai actually works. In 8th place, we have Toshiro Hitsugaya's Hyorin Maru, which again is one of the most versatile Zanpakutō in the series. But, unlike Byakuya's Senbon Zakura, Hyorin Maru also has that broken element to go alongside it, that element that tips it over the edge, and when you strip away the captain using it, reveals easily one of the strongest Zanpakutō in Bleach. In many ways, Hyorin Maru feels analogous to Ryujin Jaka. It is the ultimate Zanpakutō of its type, and can even control the weather to its benefit, massively increasing its own power and utility. Hitsugaya is famously both immature as a captain and good-natured as a warrior, leading to Hyorin Maru often feeling as though it's being held back, as though it's being shackled somehow. Hitsugaya's time as a zombie gives us a valuable insight into what this Zanpakutō could really be like. A simple swing of the Shikai is enough to cover an entire portion of a city in ice, and Hyorinmaru's power over snow, ice, and the moisture in the air means the Zanpakutō is ever-changing, ever-evolving, and capable of a plethora of abilities. But of course it's in Hyorinmaru's completed bankai that we see why this Zanpakutō is deserving of its spot on the list. Not only can Daiguren Hyorinmaru flash freeze opponents of even a gigantic scale, but it can even freeze all matter before it. Its greatest power is the ability to suspend the functions of anything it freezes, essentially nullifying all abilities with its ice, which is in my mind completely busted. As we see when Hitsugaya carves Gerard's Hoffnung in two, ordinarily damaging Gerard's blade like that would result in Hitsugaya's probable death, but Hyorinmaru completely shuts down its power. In 7th place, we have one of my absolute favourite Zanpakutō in the series, Kisuke Urahara's Benihime. The theming behind Benihime is that of creation and destruction, meaning the possibilities with this Zanpakutō are practically endless. Benihime Shikai demonstrates this on a smaller scale, as Kisuke uses it to create a variety of different constructs, from shields to explosive-laden nets. And of course the Zanpakutō can fire off a powerful arc of crimson energy when not being used for anything else, meaning Benihime has an answer for almost every situation. However, it's in Benihime's bankai, Kanonbiraki Benihime Aratame, that this Zanpakutō becomes truly broken. I've said it before, but I think this bankai is absolutely one of the strongest in the series in that its applications are limitless. Limitless! Benihime's bankai has only one ability. It can restructure anything it touches, and in a short space of time, we see this used to great effect. Kisuke restructures his enemy's body, splitting it open as soon as Askin comes within range, and restructures his own body to both restore destroyed organs, completely fixing his sight on the spot, and to empower his own physical capabilities. Kanonbiraki Benihime Aratame can even restructure the landscape around them, as Kisuke uses it to open a portal for Grimmjow to make his way through. This is probably my favourite bankai in Bleach, and it fits Kisuke perfectly, but even separating the Zanpakutō from the Shinigami shows us that this blade offers an unparalleled level of reality warping control. And in 6th place, we have my favourite Zanpakutō, though the more I think about it, the closer it becomes between this and Benihime. But of course it is Kyoraku Shunsui's Katen Kyokotsu, one of the trickiest Zanpakutō in Bleach, and the very definition of broken hacks. In Shikai, Katen Kyokotsu is already on a completely different level to almost every other Shikai in the series, giving its wielder the power to make children's games reality, bringing them to life in a deadly fashion that ensnares the opponent in games and rules that they don't understand, and couldn't possibly prepare for. Even though Kyoraku likes to joke around about how unpredictable and how moody Katen Kyokotsu is, about how it often doesn't cooperate with him, the absolute truth of this Zanpakutō is that Kyoraku is always in control and always has an inherent advantage. So long as there are games to be played, the variations of this shadowy Shikai are almost endless, meaning Katen Kyokotsu is more elaborate than most bankai. However, speaking of bankai, Katen Kyokotsu Karamatsu Shinju takes both the wielder and the target through an elaborate 4-act theatre production, flipping the notion of play on its head. While we only get to see the one story, one that tells a gruesome tale of love, betrayal, suicide, and eventually, inevitably, death, leading to an inescapable fate, it is likely that there are many others that can be produced to fit the scenario. It honestly seems like the only way to escape Kyoraku's bankai is to be totally unkillable, and, well, that's unfortunately the caliber of enemy he comes up against. But that shouldn't take away from the fact that Katen Kyokotsu is clearly one of the sneakiest, unpredictable, treacherous, and powerful Zanpakutō in Bleach. Alright, as we enter the top 5, I know the title of this video denotes manga only, but I'm gonna play a little fast and loose with that definition here. Shutara Senjumaru's Shigarami is both seen and used in the manga, albeit to considerably lesser effect than in the Thousand Year Blood War arc anime. But the anime has added so much that it's honestly just as canon as the manga, with the two of them working alongside one another to give us the ultimate form of the final arc. Shigarami reminds me a lot of Benihime in that its applications feel almost limitless. In Shikai, Shigarami takes the form of a sewing needle through which a thread of reishi constantly flows. Senjumaru can then use Shigarami to manifest all manner of constructs in an instant, weaving illusory tapestries that resemble the landscape around her, to deftly changing the composition of her opponent's clothes, imprisoning and killing them in a creation of her own making. The anime shows us that Shigarami can also be used to weave an umbrella that is capable of blocking and reflecting energy attacks, or swiftly create a makeshift doll of herself in order to act as a decoy. It's difficult to know exactly how much of Shigarami's power and capability comes from Senjumaru's own immense skill as a weaver, and the fact that her artificial golden arms are specifically designed to facilitate her Zanpakutō's ability, but even so, Shigarami is a force to be reckoned with. Shigarami's bankai manifests a gigantic loom, which then weaves a dimension made entirely of tan mono fabric, trapping Senjumaru's targets inside. Once inside the tan mono realm, Senjumaru can freely manipulate reality, drawing on the foreseen fates of her opponents to then seal them within their own personal prison. While it doesn't appear to outright kill them, Shatat's Karagara Shigarami no Tsuji is capable of dealing with an entire group of enemies at once, giving its user total control over each of their individual battlefields when inside the domain. Of course, it is specifically Senjumaru's Reiatsu that shakes the foundation of the three worlds, so that shouldn't really be taken into account here. But even without that, Shigarami is easily one of the craziest Zanpakutō in the entire series. Okay, in fourth place, we have what I consider to be the single hardest Zanpakutō to rank on this entire list. There might be some of you out there who don't even think it deserves to make the top 10 when its wielder isn't being considered, and there may be some of you out there who thinks that this should obviously be number 1, and that's of course Ichigo Kurosaki's true Zangetsu. Of course, Ichigo himself is the single strongest character in Bleach in terms of his raw, latent power and potential, so when Tensa Zangetsu is killing Soul King Yhwach in a single hit, well, a lot of that is going to be down to Ichigo himself. But there's also no denying that the true Zangetsu is in a new league of its own, something that has been really highlighted by the anime. Once forged in the flames of the royal palace, Zangetsu splits into 2 blades, a symbol of the perfect harmony achieved between Shinigami, Quincy, and Hollow powers that flow within. In this form, a single sliver of a Getsuga Tensho is now enough to act as a defensive shield, blocking abilities like Yhwach's own Sankt Borgen, while the true Zangetsu's crowning jewel Getsuga Jujisho, a golden crossblade slash, is perhaps one of the single strongest abilities we've ever seen in Bleach in terms of raw power output, utterly dominating the battlefield whenever it's used. And then, yes, while Tensa Zangetsu is definitely a little disappointing in its application and execution, it's also incredibly powerful in its own right, producing a Getsuga Tensho that does indeed carve right through the godly Yhwach. Again, this is the toughest Zanpakutō to rank on the list, because at the end of the day, what's it really doing? Throwing huge energy blasts about the place, and that's honestly it. But those energy blasts are no joke. And as I said at the top of the video, completely separating Shinigami from Zanpakutō just isn't possible. This is the one I really want to get your opinions on down in the comments. And also I think there is much more to see still from Tensa Zangetsu specifically that could change the way this ranking goes in the future. Okay, and that paves the way for the top 3 strongest Zanpakutō in Bleach, and I'd be very surprised if you hadn't seen these coming in some capacity. In third place, we have Sosuke Aizen's Kyoka Suigetsu, which really felt like one of the earliest examples of a completely broken, completely unbeatable power, the likes of which we had no idea how the heroes would eventually overcome. I've always maintained on this channel that the simpler the power, the more incredible it often is, and that's absolutely true here. Kyoka Suigetsu's sole ability is complete hypnosis, Kanzen Saimin, and it allows its wielder to totally control the five senses with perfect illusions. From the moment Aizen releases his Shikai in front of someone, they fall under its spell for the rest of their life, meaning to them, it's totally possible that the reality they see and experience on a daily basis is just as Aizen wants it to be. Kyoka Suigetsu manipulates sight, sound, touch, taste, and smell flawlessly, allowing its wielder to create absolutely perfect illusions that are all-encompassing. It is a terrifying ability, and one that is nigh impossible to circumvent or overcome. Using this power, Aizen faked his own death, having the entire Gotei 13 see and feel and experience something that simply wasn't there. In Aizen's own words, he can make a fly appear to be a dragon, or a swamp into a flower garden, but the irony is that it goes far beyond that. There's seemingly no limit to how elaborate Aizen's illusions can be, to the point where he once had someone completely different take his place and follow his captain around for an entire month without arousing suspicion. Even without knowing its bankai, Kyoka Suigetsu is one of the most powerful Zanpakutō in Bleach, even capable of subverting Yhwach the Almighty, which quite literally is the single strongest ability in the series. However, in second place, we have, by Aizen's own admission, the ultimate Zanpakutō, Shigekuni Genryusai Yamamoto's Ryujin Jaka. Fittingly, for the founder of the Gotei 13 himself, Yamamoto's Ryujin Jaka is perhaps the Zanpakutō in Bleach with the single most destructive power at its disposal, conjuring a tempestuous flame that annihilates all within its path. Ryujin Jaka is another fairly simple Zanpakutō, but it is astonishing in its might. In fact, it's quite refreshing in a sense. Most of the Zanpakutō that make up this list are tricky in one way or another, but Ryujin Jaka is here simply because of the sheer power it commands, the sheer force it can overwhelm and obliterate its foes with, the sheer torrent of inescapable fire that it wields. It is straightforward in its destruction, and that's awesome. The Shikai alone manifests a tidal wave of continuous billowing flame that's capable of overwhelming most enemies in the series, and abilities like Enetsu Jigoku tower over entire cityscapes in a majestic display of Ryujin Jaka's authority as the ultimate Zanpakutō. But of course, it is in Ryujin Jaka's unstoppable bankai, Zanka no Tachi, where the true power resides. And honestly, Zanka no Tachi makes a compelling argument for topping this list altogether. Zanka no Tachi's four distinct abilities give its wielder an unbelievable offense, capable of erasing entire swaths of land from existence with the flick of a wrist, and an unconquerable defense, surrounding Yamamoto with a robe of searing hot flame, wreathing him in the very power of the sun, the likes of which again erases things from existence that dare to get too close. Zanka no Tachi can even conjure the very dead from beneath the earth, granting its wielder an undying army of charred and blackened skeletons to do their bidding, representing a monstrous bastardization of the very meaning of the word Shinigami. Zanka no Tachi is so overwhelming that the mere act of having it active shuts down other powers across the Seirete. Hitsugaya's own bankai, which ranked 8th on this list, is completely unusable when Zanka no Tachi is heating up the atmosphere to an incredible degree. And even the Soul Society itself was at risk of being destroyed underneath its power. But right from the moment I decided to reevaluate this list, to rewrite this however many years after the last time we delved into it, there was only one Zanpakutō that could take the number one spot, one Zanpakutō so divine in its capabilities that it looks down upon the other Zanpakutō in the series from on high, capable of transforming, rewriting, and even erasing their very existence. Of course, I'm talking about Hanataro's Hisagumaru. Wait, wrong line. I mean Ichibei Hyosobei's Ichimonji. The leader of the Zero Division was always going to boast an impossible power, and well, Ichimonji is just that. Taking the form of a large calligraphy brush, Ichimonji feels weirdly meta, in the sense that it feels like God himself is intervening in this medium, in the world of Bleach itself as an art form on the page. Unusually, Ichimonji has a special ability even in its base form. Anything that touches the brush has its name halved, and in the world of Bleach, names form the very foundation of everything. For example, when Yhwach blocks the brush with his arm, the name of that limb becomes an R, and its strength is halved along with its name. And things only get crazier from there. When in Shikai, Ichimonji doesn't cut flesh, but instead splashes ink all over the battlefield. If this thick black ink blots something out, it completely erases its name, and all power that goes with it. Ichibei doesn't face off against the Shinigami in battle, but the premise is the same. Ichibei covers Yhwach's blade and Quincy Cross in ink, rendering them utterly helpless before him. If Ichimonji were to cover a Shinigami's Zanpakutō in ink in the same way, through the simple act of it being splashed upon them with but a wave of the hand, the Zanpakutō would lose its name and all of its acquired power. Absolutely everything about that Zanpakutō would become totally inaccessible, and for a Shinigami that can mean everything. I honestly wonder what that would look like. I'd kind of love to see it. What would happen to the Zanpakutō spirit if its name is completely removed? It's as though a piece of their very soul has been blotted out of existence. As I said, it's as though Kubo himself takes on the role of Ichibei, capable of writing over or erasing whatever he wants in the world, as though he were the author's own avatar. In a medium like this, a meta power like that is, for all intents and purposes, unbeatable, especially in comparison to other Zanpakutō, all of which draw their power from their name. And that's all without mentioning Ichibei's bankai, or Shinuchi as he calls it, Shirafude Ichimonji, which effectively gives Ichibei a godlike command over his target's fate and their own makeup, allowing him to bestow them with a new name after removing their original one. With this, Shirafude Ichimonji can totally dictate what that renamed individual becomes, totally transforming their attributes to fit the new description. This is an example of a power that is truly limitless, with the only limit being whatever the wielder wants to rename something as. It's for these reasons that Ichimonji is clearly the strongest Zanpakutō in Bleach, even with its Shinigami removed from the equation. Again, its powers are fairly simple, but they're unmatched, and almost godlike in the way they have command over the entire Bleach world. Alright guys, but that's it for today's video, the latest ranking of the strongest Zanpakutō in Bleach, this time for 2025. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below as to whether or not you agree with my list, with the placements, with what I've chosen. I'd love to know. How well do our opinions align, or am I completely off base with this one? Again, I've really tried my best to separate the Zanpakutō from the Shinigami itself. It is very inherently difficult to do, but hopefully that worked out for you. I'd love to hear again your thoughts down in the comments below as to where you would rank these Zanpakutō. Do please let me know. Were there any egregious examples that I missed as well? Again, I don't think there were. I had reasons for all of the Zanpakutō that I listed at the start of the video not actually making it onto the list, but you may disagree, so do please share your thoughts down in the comments. Thank you so very much for watching as always, and I hope you took something of value from this video as well today. Consider, if you haven't done already, hitting subscribe down below to help push the channel to its next major milestone, and check out Mr. Tomo Talks Games to help get that channel off the ground and running as well. Your support over there has been a total game changer, and it does mean the absolute world. And as always, I want to end this video just by saying one massive thank you and giving a huge shout out to my supporters over on Patreon again, who really do come through for channels like this at the start of the year when YouTube is pretty dry. So I massively appreciate all of your support over there. It's thanks to you that I'm able to keep doing this. So it really does mean the absolute world, and it makes an enormous difference. All right, guys, once again, thank you so very much for watching. Until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.